Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. And we're in the heart of summer. Just some minor type updates that have been coming out. Did you see that Hooters isn't going to be sponsoring Hendricks Motorsports anymore, Matt?
No.
Big time. They're so out of money that there won't be a Hooters car anymore. The restaurant's probably going to go extinct, I would believe.
Well, it seems like they got away from their business model that was working.
Yeah. You never know what's going to happen nowadays when you get to things like that. I will say I went to my first women's professional sports game over the weekend to see the NC Courage. I think that's what they're called. I get confused because there's two teams that play down here in Raleigh. And I think the other one's just called NCFC. I don't think they have a name. So it's confusing, but one's like a minor league men's. They tried to join MLS, but MLS decided to go to Charlotte maybe, which is weird because they already have an established base with Duke and UNC being into soccer as like universities, so they get a lot of like college age kids that would be interested, I would think. So for them to go to Charlotte's odd. But the women's pro team is here, and they had an Olympic send-off, which I went to. It was a little bit shorter than I expected because they had the swimmers come out from NC State that made the Olympic team and some other ones from the area. And I thought there was going to be like a panel with like questions. And they just went down and each answered like a sentence or two. It was like 15 minutes long. So I thought that was a little bit disappointing in terms of having like a send-off. But then the game was different. I've never actually been to a professional soccer game. Have you?
It's a big negative.
I've been to college when I played, but that was like what, D3? So it wasn't like they had a big crowd or anything. I will say that the crowd was kind of bigger than I expected, but it wasn't as engaging as what people tell you. Because we always hear about how all soccer is so much better than football, or at least I do from like international fans, right? Because they're like, oh, it's nonstop action. And it's nothing like hockey. Hockey is fast-paced. It's like a leisurely afternoon. Like, you don't have to be paying attention. It's very clear whenever they're going to be getting close to getting a goal. Where hockey, like, you can break away and they can score within, like, what, a second or two? No one's running down. The field's like the same size as a football field. So no one's running that in a second. It takes men 10 seconds to run down the field. So, like, the women's soccer team's not running that fast. But I will say that I think a lot of the fans that were really into it, they sing the entire game. So it's almost like, I don't even know how to put it. They had a guy playing the drums, but all his drums were like tuned the same. So it was just like a pounding, boom, 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 boom. Like whatever he played is just the same note over and over again. And the colors were blue, so they did a lot of the Michigan cheers that I'm used to. They'll do like the Charleston Shuffle or whatever it's called, where the Let's Go Blue. Except hearing it with all one note was odd. And then sometimes when they did just a quick drum beat Go Blue, like the drum line would play with the regular band behind it, but it's just minus the band. So they're just playing the same beat. So like I'm familiar with the tune. And at the end, instead of saying like Go Blue, they would say Courage. And it was hard to tell what they were saying at first. I'm like, what? I don't know what they're cheering here. But I will say it wasn't as engaging as I was expecting. Hockey is definitely way better. Basketball, even basketball, I think, I guess it kind of depends. It's definitely slower than basketball. I'll say that. I'd probably have to go to a couple games to get a better feel, especially if there was one. It was a rainy day, so I will say some of the crowd was kind of damp at the beginning, and all you had was the drum guy. When the rain finally stopped, then they had some guys that were running around with flags, and then they were trying to lead the cheers. It was kind of like an Aggie type thing where they're like the yell leaders or whatever. except they weren't wearing chaps. So I was kind of I was wondering, like, who are these guys? What do they do here? Are they here all the time? Because they had like their own section flag was called Uproar or something like that. The Uproar. So it's kind of like, I guess East Carolina football has like the Boneyard or whatever. So it's like their student section. But watching them hang out in the drum section, there's only like two guys playing. Well, one guy was playing the drums. There's another guy over there. He was singing. And then there's a group of like 10 other Uproar people singing. They sang the entire game. So it kind of gets like annoying because they're singing like hit songs. If that makes sense. It's hard to explain. And I assume that's what they would do at other soccer games, right? Because you're bored. You're singing a song. Maybe if you had like a fight song over and over again. But even college games, like you're going to hear the Michigan play like the Victors every so often. Or like you hear that Mountain Lion roar at Penn State like every time they get a first down. They're not constantly doing a lion roar the entire time. That's what I felt it was kind of with the drums. So, better atmosphere than I expected. Different atmosphere than I expected compared to other sports that I've been to. Right? Even NBA, when they do like, it's more like a DJ, which is always awkward. At least for me. Because like they're like trying to pump you up. Like it's like almost like they're going to start playing the Cupid Shuffle. And you're like, buddy, I'm just trying to watch a game here. I don't need to learn the steps to the dance. That's what an NBA game feels like to me. Or like make some noise. They did have two chants that they tried to teach you. It was make it in, I think, when they're doing a corner kick, or keep it out. I think that's what the two were. But I will say they did have, it was kind of like a Special Olympics type thing. And they were supposed to be vouchers that they gave you. And so it was for the swimmers. So if it said whenever we signed up to like, you have two swimmers, they get two vouchers. When we get there, they're like, no, son, it's one per family. And I was like, that's not what it said when I signed up. Because like, if you have kids that are coming and each one expects to get their own merchandise, because it was supposed to be a merchandise voucher. It just said merch voucher. And then you get a food basket or whatever, is what I thought it was. And then I thought that they said it was $20, but then when we got there, it was $10. So every time it kept getting worse and worse. And then they'd only gave us one. And so I went up and I was like, hey, what do you get for the $10 voucher? And they're like, oh, no, it's not. You can't even get the chicken tender basket, buddy. The exactly $10. No, you can only pick between a hot dog, a hamburger, and then a soda or a water. No Gatorade, no tendies, nothing. So that was that was odd to me, that I'm wondering if they didn't sell as many tickets as they expected. Because I had thought, and speaking with other families that were there, they had expected them to have a special Olympic type merchandise shirt or something that they were going to be giving out. They didn't have anything Olympic related. So the merchandise voucher was another $10 just at the store. And if you've been to any sporting event, you know that gets you nothing at the store. Every shirt is like $25 to $30 at minimum. I'm talking kids' shirts too. So like they give the family one $10 voucher. I saw a lot of people just grouping them up. And then I did see some other parents that had multiple vouchers. So I didn't know how that was working, how they were getting that. But if you ask the guy, he was like, no, it was only one per family. So it was weird. Like the whole thing was kind of odd to me. It wasn't an event that made me think, oh, I really want to come back here. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to be negative to it because I know they're trying to like grow soccer. But if you're trying to set up a fan event and then the fan event is like a 10-minute, it just felt like a publicity grab. And then they made it seem like they were going to have the United States Olympians there, right? So when they did the send-off from the soccer players, there's one from Australia, one from New Zealand, or maybe not New Zealand, one from Nigeria, one from Canada. I'm like, do they even have any Americans on this team? Like, what are we doing here? Why am I sending off Canadians? I don't want to cheer for them. Are you serious? I'm not cheering for any of these teams. And then finally they had one player that was going to play for America, the goalie, or the keeper, or whatever they call it. The goalie. But I was like, that was kind of odd to me too. So I was a little bit underwhelmed with the presentation to the swimmers and things like that. They did have one that was a Paralympian, right? Which I didn't know that went on the same time as the actual Olympics. Did you know that?
I thought I saw something with one of the other Olympics in the past where like they showed some highlights, but it was like there was never any like publicity for it. It was like, oh, and here's these athletes. Like,
which I thought it was cool, and I was honestly more interested in her panel because she was a swimmer and she had lost her leg. She didn't say how, which was kind of eating at me. And I was like waiting for them to open up a Q&A to see if someone would ask, but then there wasn't a Q&A. They're like, all right, that's it. Let's go. The game's starting in 45 minutes. Like, that's how big of a gap it was. We had the panel, it was early. So I had expected, they're doing it at 3. The game's at 4:30, right? The pregame festivities started at 4. So I'm thinking the panel's going to run from 3 to like 3:30, maybe a Q&A to like 4:45. It's like, no, wrapped up at like 3:15. And they're like, all right, you guys have like an hour or so, hang out. It's like, hang out. It's raining. We're in outside. It was drizzling. It wasn't like pouring or anything. And they're like, hang out. And so we didn't know what to do. We just like sat around for an entire hour. That's another thing that kind of ate at me too. It's like, why have it so spaced out for no reason? Like, it gave a false sense. And I've been to a lot of sporting events, right? I mean, like I just told you, like I went to the Mudcats game and went down on the field and stuff. And that was like 15 minutes before the game. So even then they were only doing the pregame stuff 20 or 30 minutes. So they had to know with the panel that the stands were packed for it. So I don't know if they undersold or if they oversold. Maybe they weren't expecting a lot of people to want to come meet the Olympians, right? Because I thought they would at least like shake the kids' hands or anything. Like, no. They immediately walked them out with security right to the booth. And so they sat, you could see them just watching the game in the booth. Like the box seats. So it's kind of like, that kind of is weird. Like, right? I've been to Major League Baseball games where they're like, you see the guys. Like, if I want to chat with Tony Gwynn before the game, he'll come over and chat with you. Right? Not so much here. It was like after the game, they're like, you can get autographs maybe up to availability. And then I was trying to see how many soccer players even went over to sign autographs out there. And I was thinking, everyone else is down on the field with their families. Like, they're not running over to sign autographs. There might be only two of the players that were there. So I thought it was a little bit odd. I don't know. Maybe if I need to go to a normal game, I think, without the Olympics surrounding it, because some players weren't even playing. I thought the game was good. The North Carolina team won. They played Louisville, and then I was impressed because they had a girl that only had one arm on their team playing professional soccer, and that's something I've never seen before, right? Because, I mean, like, in soccer, you don't use your hands anyway. But, like, watching the Olympics and watching the World Cup, I've never seen a men's team have... Normally, they'd be, like, a Paralympians, like I said. So that's going to be going on in Paris because they all have the same Paris send-off gear. So I'm good to see them combining it, which makes sense. But like you said, it's a double-edged sword. Awesome. They're on the same level as the regular Olympics, but now... we're just not going to talk about it. Like, right?
Yeah.
They're going to have no highlights. You'll be buried on Peacock 6. Like, you have to scroll all the way down through all of their crap just to even see any of the highlights. It's probably not even live for them either. It's like tape delayed 3 months. But I will say it was a different experience for people that if you've been used to football games, I've been to plenty of Steeler games and things like that. I've seen my share of promos. I've seen like my share of meet and greets. I've met Steelers players. I've met guys from other sports, and it's the one where after that, I was kind of like, that's not what I was expecting, and it wasn't in a good way. I'll put it that way. And you would think that the Olympians, they don't have the same hype. You can lie to me and pretend that they do, but there's no way that they're as famous as like a professional basketball or football player. Like if LeBron was there, I feel like I would have had a better chance of meeting LeBron, and he's at a way higher level, right? I feel like if I wanted to meet LeBron, I could go to an NBA game and I would have a good chance of getting a picture with LeBron. Maybe I'm naive, but like it's coming from like I met like a big fan of Hines Ward. I met Hines Ward, and it's kind of like, yeah, as tall as I expected, Hines. So like that type of thing. I met Ben Roethlisberger. Like you meet the guys that are big time athletes, and you would think that if you're an Olympian, you might only get to go to the Olympics once in your life, twice, right? If you're going more than that, you might be pretty lucky, especially like swimmers. Wouldn't you want to meet some of the fans? That's just what I would think, right?
Well, they're missing out on that opportunity for extra engagement and potential money offers.
Well, because like your thing, it's the same thing with women's basketball with like Caitlin Clark going out. I had some family drive all the way out to see her play, and they said it was awesome watching her play. I think they might have been at the game where she got the triple-double. But she's putting in the work going out there. Most of her money is coming in from advertisements, right? The Olympians, they're getting most of their money from advertisements. That's why a guy like Phelps makes a ton. People actually want to meet him and stuff like that. I like the Olympians that were there. I knew the guy from NC State, Ryan Held. I think he was on one of the Michael Phelps relays. He was there. I would never have recognized him in person. Hell, I might have passed him by at NC State multiple times. I would never have known. Like I don't recognize them. Same with like some of the football players I saw. I've been watching a lot of like pre-college football hype vids, and there were some guys. It was like Washington Huskies were like congratulating one of their ex-players. I forget who the hell it was. And I saw a picture of him, and I'm like, I never would have known that that's what that guy looked like. I only know his name from fantasy, and that's it. Never seen him with his helmet off. They never show him on TV. And so I'm like, that's what I was thinking at the Olympics. I'm like, hey, no, I didn't know what these football players looked like. I sure as hell don't know what the Olympians look like unless even if you're watching the trials, right? They had so many Olympians on there. I watched a little bit of the swimming. You can't keep up with it. Like, there's no way you knew everybody. And they weren't really showing or talking a lot. It was like, here's Heat 16. And you're like, all right, well, I know from swim meets, the middle lanes are usually the top swimmers, right? So if you're gambling, you could trick your kids and be like, all right, I'm picking lane number 4. And then 9 times out of 10, that one's winning. And you're really cleaning house. And they're like, dang, I was cheering for lane 1. I'm like, bad move, my man. Picking the wrong lanes. So that's kind of what, I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think, personally, I think meeting athletes is kind of like weird. Like I'm not one guy to like, if I saw an athlete or even an actor, like I probably wouldn't want to get a picture with them, right? Because like, what am I going to do with that picture?
Yeah.
Or, like I've seen people, like I think I took some photos just because people were like, hey, if you get any photos, I'm like, no. Am I supposed to be? Right? I'm listening to them. I thought they were going to be giving like the kids, pumping them up, giving them some tips on like swimming. And it wasn't like that at all. It was just them talking about how they swam at the Olympics before or how they didn't. And so I was kind of like, all right. But I saw a lot of people like just taking photos, like zooming in and taking a photo of that person's face. And I just thought like, why do that? Like when I went to the big house for the first time, I took photos of my seats to show people like, yo, dude, I was like row 7. I'll never have tickets like this probably again in my life. Unless I'm going crazy and like paying out the ass for tickets in the big house, right? So like I took photos like that, and I've done Steelers too, like, hey, check out these seats. Send them to people. I could see like if you're taking a photo of yourself at the game, like that's kind of cool maybe. But just a photo of you. I know some people that love to get photos of them with like pro athletes, and I always wonder like, do they flip through their memories and like reminisce? Like, can't remember when I touched Jose Canseco
I
that
touched
one
Bill
time.
Cowher.
Yeah, Bill Cowher. I rubbed his mustache a little bit. Like I did meet Bill Cowher, right? I never took a photo of it. I think we might have talked about it on the show. But like he was at NC State, went to his thing, talked to him, talked to the other guy, um, one of his handlers or whatever that was big from Pittsburgh, talking to him a little bit. But it was kind of like people were like, "You want a picture with Bill Cowher?" I'm like, "What am I going to do with it? Frame it?" Like that's weird, too. I think a little bit.
I think it's different. Like if you actually have like an actual relationship with them, and it's like we go golfing together. I have this nice picture of us.
Yeah, if you're like friends, right? It's not like here he is giving a speech, and here I am all dressed in my work outfit, hanging out. Like, yeah, me and Bill.
Because I think like if the roles were reversed and like you were that celebrity, like I think that would get old of just being like, oh, let me get my picture taken with this random person who's never going to do anything with that picture again.
Hey,
Like,
I've seen some people like that I've recognized, and I just usually be like, "Hey, what's up? Big fan," or something like that, you know? Because I feel like that's more meaningful. It's a quick. You're not wasting their time. You're acknowledging that you recognize them, right? And normally they're trying to just do their thing. I've seen some celebrities that just blow you off, even if you're just saying hi, which to me is kind of odd. And then I've seen the same. Like I saw a musician, he blew me off once, and I was like, that's really weird. Like you're walking, like maybe you're going so hard to the show. Then I see him after the show, and he's awesome. Wants to talk, like wants to know if he wants some pictures or whatever, autographs, and it's like two different people. That's kind of weird. Like you're putting on the show, right? That's kind of why I like minor league baseball because like you can talk to the dudes. One of the things I like to do would just look up where they're from, like see if you can like find out a little bit about them, and then you can just heckle them the entire game. And a lot of times they're just like, "Why do you know who I am?" There's like, "You posted on Instagram, buddy. I'll be reading your feed to you in the output." And then they're out there laughing. And I went to a game, and then the guy threw us the ball like last time because he was joking around with them. Because like he's like, "Yeah, whatever." He's having fun. Because think about it, you're playing in baseball, especially like minor leagues too. You might not be making that much money. You're playing how many games a year, right? It's going to get boring. You're playing in a different city you don't even know. And then some fan is just hounding you and picking on you the entire game. Like it's going to add a little bit of excitement to it. You're like the villain, right? You need a heel. That's kind of what it is. Even if they're hitting like poorly, it's like, buddy, I could hit 178. Just tell coach to tap me in. Or like if you have a buddy brought a glove, like, hey, my buddy got his glove. Tell your coach he wants to play. Like our old friend Rick, right? He always has his glove. Probably still listen to the show. He should call back in, right? I'm sure he's listening. One of our hardcore downloaders, right? That's what I go to a game, and like the soccer, I was surprised that with the soccer they kicked the ball into the crowd twice the entire game.
did you get to keep it?
No. That was the first thought. Like everyone in the crowd was like, "Oh my gosh, did that girl get to keep that ball?" And no, they had a lady run up and snatch it out of her hands. And
Aggressively.
Imagine if that was your job. And you're like, "All right, here, what would you like to
Turn
do?"
it to a rugby scrum.
"Hey, I'm applying for a job. I actually just want to get the balls that go into the crowd." It's basically it.
I want to be licensed to just destroy people.
Yell at little kids. You're like, "Hey, quit touching the ball." But then I noticed, so then I didn't know this before, but that same person had a ball and they stood behind the net. So when the ball went, because I'm guessing most of the balls that are out of play in soccer are like kicked over the net. So she threw the ball in and then ran and aggressively got the other ball back. And then she would take that one and hold it and wait for the next one to go into the crowd. But like I said, it didn't happen too often. Normally, I think they have a net there, right? I didn't look that close. Maybe they didn't have a net, and maybe more balls went into the crowd than I thought. But they weren't like power kicking over the net like I think I've seen a lot. Most of their misses were like low and wide, so they just kind of bounced off the wall. Something that I noticed. But let's see. That's my tidbit. We are recording early, so I don't know. We'll see how long the show goes. I had some other things that came up. I gotta see. I did talk about the bait and switch. I felt like it was a bait and switch. They just wanted you to go there to buy their concessions. That's kind of what I feel like for some of the games. And then I wonder, they asked for like a fan experience, and I'm like, do I be the guy that like kind of just tells them like, yo, this is not a good experience. Like, I'm trying to be positive here and give you guys some tips, but like, it wasn't something that made me think, hey, I really want to go back to the game. Because I asked the kids like, hey, you want to go back? Would you go back to a game? And they're like, I don't know. But we'd go to a Mudcats game. That's what they kept saying. Like, oh man, I wish we were at a Mudcats game. Which is odd, because a lot of people think baseball is even more boring, right? I guess not. I guess I'm wrong. So the other big news that came out, they put my guy, Donovan Edwards, bro. They're doing the EA college football, starting to get ready with like their promos. And he played a guy that I thought was supposed to be like a professional video game player, right? That's how I thought it was set up. I don't know if you watched the video and I sent it to you.
Yeah, I watched most of it.
So then he's kicking his ass. And I thought, like, is he rigging it? But the guy, like, he looked mad. Like, he was kind of taken back that Donovan Edwards was just running all over him with himself, which is hilarious. Like, he made himself the MVP of both games. And I thought, did they jack up his stats a little bit for this matchup? And they had the horns. Like, they had fake smoke pillars. So when he scored in the game, he's talking trash on this guy, this YouTuber that plays the game pretty much probably for a living. I don't know. He looked like he was college age, but I mean, Donovan's only college age too. And he beat him both times. And I was kind of impressed because I thought maybe Michigan's team isn't as bad as I thought in the game. I kind of run the same system as what Donovan was running. Heavy runs, a lot of play action passes rolling out. And I thought maybe I could play as Michigan to be pretty good. Because the other guy played as Texas, which Texas is ranked pretty high in the game. And then he played as Penn State at Penn State. And I will say that some of the presentation stuff did sound pretty good. If the Don was telling him that it sounded good and he was complimenting it, he would know. He's been down there. He's been at Penn State during those loud games. So I'm kind of psyched for the game now. They had a lot of the pre-intro type stuff. I just want to see what they do with Dynasty.
Now, how many packs of cards did you buy?
I didn't buy anything yet. I'm pretty sure I'm just getting the regular version. It's already on sale if you have Game Pass, which I do. And I already got $10 whatever voucher as like a bonus for their Game Pass rewards or whatever that I have. And then I think I have another one. So I'll probably be able to get it for like $40. So I'm probably just going to get the regular game. I think it would be 10% off, which is about $10, and then 2 vouchers that I can get. So that's probably what I'm going to end up doing. I looked at the deluxe version, and I know I'm not going to play with the Road to Glory mode or whatever it's called. I just want to play Dynasty.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I really want to do is I want to kind of play around with realignment. And so I hear a lot of good things. Like that guy that he played against did a series of videos, and he was saying that there's a lot of more customizations available. They said that last time though, and the thing that was in, you were locked in, and you're forced to use every conference, right, as part of the agreement. And I have a hard time believing that they're going to get rid of that, right? Like if I wanted to kill the ACC and just eliminate a conference, I couldn't do that in NCAA 14. Probably for licensing reasons, right? They're like, well, you're not going to kill the Pac-12. That wouldn't happen in real life. Wink. So, like, what's going to be the setup? Like, is there really a Pac-2? Can I just delete that conference and add them to the Big 12? Could I get down to like 4 power conferences? Or actually, like I've been saying, 3. The Big 10, the SEC, and then have like a Big 12 and name it one of the joke names that they're coming out with their marketing agreement, like the Taco Bell 12 or something like that. And then I just have that be the rest of the teams in there, West Virginia, Pitt, bring that matchup back and have that be like the 3rd conference. Because it's kind of like college basketball. And it's one of the things here that like when they're doing the expansions and they talk about, even when they're talking about doing the expanded NCAA basketball tournament, the automatic qualifiers is my big hang up. So like I want every conference to get an automatic qualifier. And I want to be able to set that up in EA college football. So can I do that? Can I cut the conferences down to 8, have a 16-team playoff with 8 auto bids, and then 8 at large? Because that's ideally what I would want. And then you could sim it a bunch of times and see what it's like. Does it work? Because that's the beauty of it. That's what we haven't had with all this realignment stuff. You haven't had a game that you could really sim and do that. Because like in the old one, like I said, you couldn't get rid of conferences. You couldn't blow it up. Like what if the SEC disappeared and there was just one 32-team conference? Like what if they merged with the Big 10? How would that affect scheduling? How are schedules going to work? I did see that they had, you can change the SEC from an 8-game schedule to a 9-game schedule. I would like to do that and then run a couple sims to see how the records look just compared to the Big 10 and the other conferences that do have a 9-game schedule. Right? Does it balance things out? If you bump up the SEC and the ACC to 9-game schedules, how do the rankings look? Because I know the game uses the same BS rankings that everyone else has, where it goes by what your winning percentage is. And if you're only playing an 8-game schedule, your winning percentage is going to be higher. So if I bump that up to 9, does it balance it out to where instead of having 10 SEC teams in the top 25 or whatever it might end up being, is it going to just be a little bit less? It's going to be more even. It's going to be like 8 and 8. That's what I'm curious about, and that's one of the things that I would like to sim. And heck, maybe we can make some content out of it for the show. That's one of the first things I'm going to kind of play around with. So I'll probably just mess around. I'll play probably 0 games, and I'll just end up simming a bunch of random crap and then talking about it on the podcast. You'll be like, what offense you running? I'll be like, no, I don't know. I haven't changed anything. I'm going in. Someone said that you can't edit the rosters because of licensing agreements, and that's what gives me pause with the conferences. If you can't edit names, man, are they going to really let you delete conferences? The audacity. I'd probably get a letter in the mail from the ACC for deleting it in the state of North Carolina. Saying, bro, you can't do that. EA forwarded all your information to us. Now we're going to bring you to court. Small claims court.
Got to cease and desist.
Yeah, we heard about you talk about it on the podcast, my man. You can't do that. I'll tell them, like, bro, you're not a real conference. Miami hasn't even won a championship in the ACC. Get out of here. Which I was telling a buddy of mine. I've been watching a lot of Michigan pre-type stuff, like for the season, preseason, like their workout videos and things that the university's putting out. And they seem to be focused with the new coach on a lot of stuff. But now, maybe because it's like the UM thing, Miami, I'm getting a lot of Miami recs in my YouTube. And so normally they're like documentaries, I just put them on, I listen to them. I don't really watch while I'm working. So like, it'll just automatically play the next one. And I'm hearing like Miami is going to be doing this. And I'm like, what the heck just started playing? I'll look it up. It's like Miami hype. They have the best roster talent in the ACC and all of this stuff, how it's going to finally come together this year. I was like, do they just have a script that they recycle every year?
Yes.
Where they're like, this is going to be the year. And is that what Michigan fans used to be like? With Harbaugh, like, hey, we're going to be the same.
Yes.
But you never knew with our QBs, bro. That's the difference. Like, that's what I've been saying.
College it was always a big pro style passer that couldn't move and would get sacked at inopportune moments. Then you got McCarthy that was able to move a little bit, and you won the ship.
Hey, we had Shade Patterson. He wasn't as accurate, though.
Fragile.
Yeah, he was always hurt, too. Which that's another part of the game. Your guy can get hurt and banged up. Like that guy played Penn State, and he kept dropping a large back. And he got sacked like a bunch of times early in the game, and then he was limping around. And I thought, oh my gosh, that has to. If Penn State fans are watching this game, it has to give them flashbacks of like the poundings he was taking against Michigan the past couple of years. And they had to have been like, oh my god, this is our time. We can't even can't even beat Michigan in the fake game. We're still getting blown out by 40 points. Good lord, like had to be so disheartening. But at least we're not on the schedule this year for them. That's the thing. Penn State has such an easy schedule. I'm going to keep talking about it in my preseason hype. That if Penn State doesn't win, it's not really a division anymore. If they're not one of the top two teams, I don't know how you can keep extending Franklin. You got the stud quarterback, check. You got a lot of guys coming back, check. And don't even give me that bullshit like you don't. Because like, oh, Ohio State has a lot too. Don't forget. Like, no, I remember. Because I've been hearing that for Ohio State for the past 3 years about how that was a fluke against Michigan. And how all their guys are back. And now they're in another situation where they downgraded QBs. And maybe I'll be wrong and he'll have a better season than McCord. But I have a hard time. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if McCord had a better season than Ohio State's quarterback ends up putting up. Maybe I'll be wrong. But that wouldn't surprise me if it happened. Where's he at? Syracuse? Syracuse has been decent. I don't even know who their coach is anymore, though. It's not Adazio anymore. Dazio? I think they pushed him out a while ago. So, I don't know. But that's what I want to see. Some more videos. Because now we have the game coming out. I want to see, like, what's the talent for, like, Oregon? Watching the pre-things for Michigan. Michigan's team is still gigantic. There's a lot of big guys. And that's Harbaugh style. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're just pushing around a lot of the Pac-12 teams that come in. Like what you saw with Washington last year. I mean, if they're pushing around Bama last year, and a lot of those D linemen are coming back, that should be cause for concern. If you're another team in the Big Ten, I would think. So, but the guy, Mason Graham, dude, he cracks me up. He reminds me of the guy from Sandlot, Porter. I don't know if it's the hair or what, but every time he talks in an interview, I'm like, oh my gosh. That's what he reminds me of. Hamilton Porter. And then he'll be a top 10 pick. It'll be funny. And then everyone will see it, maybe. Maybe you'll see it. You'll be like, oh my gosh, I know exactly who this guy is now. Mason Graham. Get ready for him. Let's see. Anything you want to talk about?
Well, Florida State had a pretty big movement in their ongoing battles with the ACC that they're now allowing for, as part of their discovery, the full, like they had a copy of the media contract with the ESPN, but a lot of the information was redacted on it. And it came out today that they were now allowing the full contract to be viewed by Florida State, which I think is a really big step in proving how much of a financial deficit they're facing in comparison to the other major conferences. I think this is also leading towards what they're going to do to make their statement of leaving the ACC. And I think it's important that they do that before the August 15th deadline, because they want to give themselves enough time to make sure that if they jump conferences, whether it be the SEC or preferably the Big Ten, that they have a landings. They have enough time that for scheduling purposes and things like that they can make that work. I'm hoping with this discovery that it benefits them, that they can start to point out some of the flaws and where the negotiations were done with some nepotism and bias that would definitely go against their mission of trying to negotiate in terms of what's the best contract that would support all the members, because progressively as the SEC and then the Big Ten have gone into their negotiations, they've just stacked millions on millions. And, we had talked on and off before. You look at a school like Florida that's in the SEC, and for as much of a dumpster fire as they've been these last couple of years, they still have, $30 million on Florida State? I mean, what can Florida State do with the uptick in recruiting with an extra $30 million that they could throw toward facilities or NIL or whatever else that they want to throw money at to improve the quality of the program? I mean, it's a night and day thing that they should be doing everything in their power to expedite the process, and I'm sure they are.
That's what I'm wondering too with the revenues that were reported. I thought that the new thing that they're trying to push through, I haven't seen the exact numbers, but I was wondering if they were taking the total revenue and that's the cut that you're supposed to give players to. Because I think a lot of it, like with Michigan State being so high, I think they were top 10 on the list. I think a lot of that was from donor money that was coming in for other various projects. So if that's coming in, I wonder if the cut has to come from all revenue. So if you're doing fundraising for a stadium like Penn State is percentage of that going to have to go to paying the athletes too? Which I think would make it harder of a sell to say like, hey, our team's pretty garbage right now. We've only won like 6 games, but we need a new stadium. Like, do you want to donate? But you have to donate a little bit more because we have to give a percentage to the athletes. And he's like, I'm paying these 6-win dudes. Like Northwestern's doing. Like, hey, we've only been getting 8 wins, but we need that new, smaller, high-tech stadium. And they're like, do I need to donate to this? Probably not. So I wonder if that's going to have a revenue drop that we see. Because that's one of the things, like, as we get into more of the NIL type stuff, because even with the recruiting now, they're still not supposed to. I just saw a thing on Fox where they were doing like their pre-college football, and they're wondering with some of the letters going out to teams about like recruiting violations or whatever, if they're going to start sending them out to teams like Texas that clearly have players arriving to signing day in like Lambos, which is something that you're not supposed to do. Like, you're not supposed to do any NIL before they sign. So, like, teams are definitely flaunting it. You see, I know Texas is one of the schools that's been doing it. I've seen it a lot of across the board in the SEC where these players are just showing up in cars that they don't own. They have access to before signing, right? On their visits or whatever. They're driving them around, doing other things that they're not supposed to be doing because the NIL is only supposed to be when you're there, right? Like, you sign, it's not supposed to be paid to play. It's supposed to be you play and then you get paid. But the NCAA is not doing anything about it. So, like, would they start dropping the hammer on some of these schools? Because they could very easily even things up pretty fast. Because it seems like the high-ranked schools have been flaunting a lot of the cars and other things, and if they really wanted to stay relevant, they could start hammering them. But I feel like they're not going to because they don't care and they want the money. Like, why would you start hammering Georgia, Alabama, and like Texas, right? Because they're going to be 3 of the top 5 programs this year. Or at least top 10. I don't know how far they have Bama fallen. So what do? Don't care? Don't see it? Like, if Florida, like Florida State, they stay in the ACC, Florida just having a little bit of a head start there in terms of just TV money to even pay players is going to make their depth that much better. And then if you continue to have a rivalry game with them, you're going to be at a disadvantage where do you start losing 7 out of 10? 4 out of 5? Like, what's going to be the line once they're able to start loading up some of these backup guys because they're paying them SEC money, right? We haven't had that in the past.
I mean, I definitely think that having that revenue would be a major benefit.
I think Clemson's, they're panicking They're going all in on the lawsuit too. And I'm not sold on them having as good of a landing spot as Florida State. Honestly, like I've been saying, North Carolina and Florida State would probably be the top two picks if you're in the Big Ten and you had to take two schools. I mean, obviously, it would be Notre Dame and UNC is the top two, but let's say Notre Dame's not coming. Unless it's a four-pack and you're grabbing Notre Dame, Clemson, Florida State, and UNC, then it's over. It's over. That's it. Like, there's no way that the SEC can counter. There's no teams out there that's available. They could grab a Miami, but, like, they're not relevant. As I joked about them not winning the ACC. They haven't won the ACC since they joined 20 years ago. Like, that's how insane it's been. So, for them to not have a way to counteract grabbing Florida State, the Tar Heels, and Notre Dame, and heck, throwing Clemson as a recent national championship winner, there's no one out there. They can't grab Oregon. They're already in the Big Ten now. Like, they're the other up-and-coming hot team that you've been hearing about forever, right? They're putting it together this year. They got it. Don't worry, next year, they got it. They got the Nike money. It's coming. They're putting it together next year. And then every year, it's like, when are they putting it together? We still haven't heard it actually come together. So that's where I think the SEC, they could grab maybe like an Oklahoma State or West Virginia, like some teams that have been historically close. But after Notre Dame and Florida State, and Clemson, that's pretty much it.
I mean, and I feel like with Clemson, they're putting themselves in this catch-22 because on one hand, they're saying, "Take us, we're a worthy add additional commodity to the Big Ten," but they're not showing in their action that they're doing things to compete at that level. They had that pocket where Venables was there, and there were the alleged paying for players or having those backdoor church schemes that they were running to pull people in. But I mean, it was out there that kind of stuff was going on, and now that it's come more to light, and it's kind of where I have a hard time with how do you successfully rein it in, because I feel like as far as the paying for players, it's been going on since forever. It's just there's only one school that's ever been major penalized over it, and it was SMU. And because of how drastic it crippled the program, I don't think you'll ever see another program face that kind of punishment. So they recognize when you put those types of sanctions on, it's going to absolutely cripple a school, which they're not going to do that to a university intentionally because they want that additional revenue. And they definitely aren't going to do it to Georgia or Michigan or Texas. They're not doing them to those programs because why would you throw the book at one of those programs and then crush their chances of winning, which would hurt the fan base, the TV money, the everything else? Like, they're not going to cut their nose off to spite their face. So I feel like as far as some of this pay, like the pay for players is a little bit insane, but I feel like it's not anything that hasn't been going on for decades. It's just now it's more in front of you. It's present and it's visible of what people are getting paid, as opposed to I showed up for my visit and there was a McDonald's bag filled with money there and I don't know how it got there. Like, you know, it's one of those deals. So I feel like, I think from a rivalry standpoint, Clemson would be a good partner with Florida State, but I kind of agree with you that I think UNC would probably be the better fit because they would bring consistent basketball with them. Their football isn't top tier, but I feel like it's more competitive than what the middle of the pack Big Ten's bringing right now. So I feel like it would help them without necessarily bringing in a program that's going to battle with your Michigans and Ohio States for the championships. Like they'll punch out a couple people, but they're not going to be a heavy contender for your championship.
And
switching over.
That's why I thought you bring them in, because they also are good at Olympic sports, something that the Big Ten's been really trying to get back around. I mean, you're looking around the country. They didn't really bring in Stanford. They could have brought in Stanford and really started to take home some of those all-around championships. But honestly, every time it seems like if it's another sport other than like Penn State pops up with like some volleyball stuff, same with like Nebraska. But for most of the other sports like baseball, softball, like it's usually Michigan or bust. Like, and that's not even like a home or take. That just seems like they're the only ones that are making a deep run. Gymnastics, like some things like that. It's all SEC schools, and then you'll see like Michigan there finishing in the top 4. Ohio State's kind of close sometimes, but it really seems like it's only Penn State and Michigan that are really trying to do an all-around, hey, we're going to try to be good at other sports. Having a North Carolina that gets you a little bit of a hold in the South, and they have a lot of the Olympic training type stuff, which we talked about on the top of the show, right there available, where they do the ACC right there at the Women's Pro Stadium. Like they do all the tournaments and stuff for the ACC right around here. So it'd be nice to just chip into that and just make that part of like the Big Ten rotation. And like to your point, they're not that good at football. So it helps with, hey, we're bringing in Florida State. And we know, I talk about pods, but inevitably as the conference gets bigger, you're going to have some type of divisions or something brought back in for scheduling. Having a selling point where you're telling the TV networks like, hey, no, our top dogs are still going to be in this division, Penn State and Florida State, or maybe heck Notre Dame getting thrown in there. Like you don't want another guy battling for wins and knocking wins away from Notre Dame. You just don't. Like that's why I don't think they'd put Notre Dame in with an Ohio State and Michigan. They don't want them to have 2 losses every year, right? People will start tuning out. That's why Notre Dame cut the Michigan contract to begin with. They were losing. They couldn't beat Brady Hoke and they had Brian Kelly. Like, what are they doing? Right? Harbaugh crushed them like 40 points in that one rain game, and they're like, we weren't ready for the rain. Like, give me a break, Notre Dame. But that's the selling point for TVs. Like, you need to have some schools that are able to take beatings and keep their fan base. Like Nebraska, for some reason, hasn't been good. They're watching teams like Minnesota and Wisconsin and Iowa win the West, and they can't do crap. But they keep having a full stadium for whatever reason. Like there must be nothing to do in Nebraska, right? College World Series and Nebraska football. That's it. So you're like, win or lose, we're here, baby. Like the SEC, we don't know. Like you're bringing in Oklahoma, you're bringing in Texas. They can't keep winning. Like Oklahoma won however many Big 12 championships. And heck, maybe they do. But then that means that, hey, Bama or Georgia aren't winning anymore. Or Florida or like Tennessee. Like some of the teams like Tennessee might never, ever come back ever again. Like ever. They just might never come back. And is that going to be okay for their fans? Like I saw a lot of their baseball fans like jumping around that they won something. And they're like, we just wanted to win something. And I was thinking like, that might just be it. That might be it because they're not building up the current brands in the SEC. They're bringing in guys to just take over even more. Like Tennessee can't get through Bama or Georgia. And now you have to get through Oklahoma. I'm not even at it in Texas because Texas couldn't even get through Oklahoma for most of years. Like they made one playoff. That's it, right? This past year, and they lost.
Yeah. I say for a while there, Lincoln Riley owned them.
Yeah, so like they couldn't even beat Oklahoma. Now you have 1 year, and I mean I had the same thing with Harbaugh. Harbaugh gets in, they lose to Georgia that first year, and it's like, all right, we might never be back. Or we could be back. Everyone's coming back, and then we lose to TCU. Like I could see Texas make the playoffs this year and then lose to somebody in the first round, and it would have to be a disappointment. And then they would just be praying that Arch Manning is their savior if Quinn Ewers can't get it done. But like now you're in a harder conference and an expanded playoff. I don't know which gamble is going to pay off more. I've seen the Big Ten gamble pay off where they keep their top brands alive. Like Ohio State and Michigan, it only takes for them to kind of break through. Penn State's been close, but now you're bringing in USC. Like that had to be part of the pitch. Like, hey guys, now you're going to get credibility. Because even if you lose to like an Ohio State or Michigan or someone, that's a quality loss. You weren't getting a quality loss in the Pac-12. Like let's be real. They weren't. Just like Florida State, if they were to lose to Boston College, they're done. Heck, they went undefeated and they were done. Right?
Right. And that was always my argument. Like, I knew for years that was going on. Like, that was the mindset. But in the back of my mind, I always felt like there's a component that you control your destiny. And I feel like this past season was one of those, like, you can't deny that there's an anti-bias toward the program, because there's literally no other scenario where you take another team that runs it undefeated, is a conference champion, is playing in the top 5 all year, and then is left out. Like, it just doesn't happen. Like, and you laugh because there's literally not another example. The only other times where you have these controversial things is when you have what played out in the SEC championship game, where you have Alabama beats Georgia, and then Georgia beats Alabama, and now they each have a loss. So which one do you take, one over the other? Like, at that point, you had an opportunity to win it all, and you lost a game. Like, yeah, I think it's a different mindset. And then when you take that and you're looking at, well, which schools are going to get in? They've pretty much already announced, like, if you're in the Big Ten, your top 2 or 3 schools are going to get in just on name value. In the SEC, like, they're going to get 2 or 3 schools in just because, and you laugh about it every year, but I say, like, even in years past, the SEC and the Big Ten would have random teams in the top 25 for no reason, just so that when the rankings come out, you can say, well, Michigan played 5 teams that were top 25. Well, they were ranked week 1 and 2 when they had no business being ranked at all, and now they're 2 and 8, and that strength of schedule doesn't matter, but you can still put it on your ticker. Hey, 5 wins against ranked opponents.
How dare you talk about Michigan State like that, bro? It wasn't their fault their team fell apart because their coach was doing weird things on Zoom calls. And then you have, what? Iowa, they've been solid. Always a quality win. Top 25. Killer defense. No offense. So it's boring to watch, but you like it. I will say that the Florida State thing, whenever it leaked out, I still couldn't believe it because I honestly didn't think they were going to leave Florida State out. I thought they were going to leave Texas out and say, like, welcome to the SEC. Right? You beat Bama, but you didn't win the SEC, buddy, like they did. So you're out. Then Florida State gets in. Nick Saban gets in. And really, I mean, you probably would have had the exact same kind of result, right? If Florida State would have played Washington without the QB. Washington was clicking at the time, and then Michigan played Bama anyway. So, like, what did they end up doing? Like, I don't even know if the playoffs would have been that much different, but it was just a slap in the face that they picked Texas over Florida State, because, like, that was how it ended up shaking out. They wanted Texas in because of the brand and because ESPN knew that they were joining the SEC. That's basically what it is. And Florida State was trying to get out of their contract with ESPN. And they were like, no way. We're not putting you guys in.
And that's why I can't wait for the first game in Ireland. The game day they're going to roll up to the set and just give Florida State fans a running start to just drink all morning and just get themselves right. Yeah. They'll have to, like, censor the majority of game day. I may record that one just to have that saved.
I will say you are right too about them hyping up the Big Ten and SEC playoffs because I keep seeing projections now of like Michigan with 3 losses being in the playoffs, and I'm like, yes, baby, finally the national championship paid off. We'll get the benefit of the doubt. 3 losses, quality losses, Matt. We're in.
One of the things I feel like that has been to your disadvantage over the last couple of years is you have that rivalry game with Ohio State, and it's played out recently the way in the '90s Florida State was, where you're playing a top ranked opponent, and if you lose, kiss your chance at a national championship goodbye. And when Ohio State was on that run, it was like Michigan was winning games, but then they get there, lay an egg, and I was like, all right, have fun in the Toyota Bowl. Like you have no chance. Where at least now you have that opportunity that if you lay an egg, that there's a point of getting it into the playoffs and having a justification for it. Like if your only one loss was to the number 1 seed or number 2 seed, like with the expanded playoff, it makes sense. When we had it in the format of the 4 teams, they had of the Power Fives, it was kind of like they had it laid out of if you're undefeated, if you're a conference champion, like they had all of the criteria there that they kind of took away from needing the computer rankings, needing the outside perspectives. And I feel like they expanded it. So now all it's doing is it's going to take, instead of your top 4, now you're just saying, all right, well, in the expanded format, you're still going to have X number from the Big Ten. So maybe it is your Ohio State, your Michigan, and then throw in a West Coast, Oregon, Cal, Southern Cal, and there's 3 of your spots. Then you look at the SEC. Well, there's Texas, there's Georgia, there's potentially Bama. Like you're not going to keep them out because they've been relevant recently. Well, there you go. There's without batting an eye, there's six teams right off the bat, not factoring in any of your Cinderella teams or other conference champions.
That's what I want to see. What's going to happen? Like if Penn State were to make the Big Ten championship game, but then you had like a 1-loss or 2-loss Michigan that just didn't make it because of the tiebreaker, is that championship game going to be the eliminating factor? And then you just have the other team just back right in, like, oh, slide right in here. Okay. Because like I have a feeling like if it gets down to it and Michigan has the Ohio State head-to-head, that game's still going to get people out of the Big Ten championship game. But in reality, it might not get you out of the playoffs. Right? I mean, we saw it with Ohio State backing in. That's why if Lincoln Riley would have just got the job done, the TCU loss wouldn't even hurt that bad. Because then we had to watch Ohio State almost beat Georgia and win the national championship. Like they were one missed field goal away. And so that's where I think some of the Big Ten power is. They saw that Ohio State almost beat Georgia on a missed field goal. And then they watched Michigan win the championship last year. That's 2 years back to back where Georgia crushed TCU in that game, but they should have lost to Ohio State if you're being honest. So we were really close to having the past 2 champions be Big Ten champs. And so now with the expanded Big Ten, are we going to see more games like that where you would think Ohio State has no chance against Georgia, but then they have to actually play them, and that might not be the case. I think it also helps a lot of the other smaller schools. That's kind of why I'm still going to harp. Like I still think that the automatic bids for the playoff game, they should 100% be all conferences, just like in the college basketball. If they're going to expand it, the automatic bids should not have to play in that first round. Like you get a reward for beating your conference, for winning your conference or whatever, because they're large now. So it is a big reward onto itself. That heck, if you want to expand the football playoffs, have all of the automatic bids. They're in from every conference, and they shouldn't have to play if you expand again to like 24 or whatever, which is probably inevitable. Because that's like what the lower division FCS has, right? I think. Where it's like 24. So like you would have enough room for all 8 or 10 conference champs, and they should all be exempt from playing in that opening round because, like you said, the regular season should mean something. If you have a loss, you have a loss. If you have a conference champ, you have a conference champ. It doesn't matter. Like, if you didn't make it to that game because of a tiebreaker or whatever, you have another chance. Like, I'm using Penn State as my example because they have an easier schedule. There's a great chance they could win and play like an Ohio State and lose in the Big Ten championship game and then have that loss keep them out of the playoffs. And then they'll sneak in an Oregon and a Michigan and say, oh, we got 3 Big Ten teams. Like, do we really need Penn State? They just lost. They're playing, like, they had a chance. They lost it, right? And they'll kind of use that as like, oh, that was a kind of a playoff game for them. Just like they kind of use that reasoning for some of the other schools. Like, oh, that was it. It's up until like Florida State last year where they had no excuse. They're kind of just like, their guy shouldn't have got hurt. Like, oh, okay. Great. How many other teams got hurt before? Like, how many other guys are out there playing without a guy that's like injured or whatever? So, annoying. I just want it to be fair. I'm excited for the new season coming up. I did have one more thing. Was it Cam Sutton got suspended for like the first 8 games for the Steelers for his domestic violence or whatever? He's not even fighting it. So that's a bad look. But I mean, I haven't really seen much from the Steelers that are going to sway my prediction. We'll get into some of the NFL stuff here in a little bit. Yeah, 8 games. So I'm pretty sure it was from domestic abuse or something. Yeah, that was the Lions released him, so they brought him in and then he's suspended. Will it make that big of a difference for the Steelers? Maybe. But we'll see what happens. I did see, speaking of Steelers, I didn't know Ike Taylor had a son that was committed to Notre Dame. He just flipped to Michigan as a recruit, so that's nice. Because Ike Taylor, I remember him, he was there for a while, I think.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people hated him. So maybe his son will keep the tradition alive of Michigan having NFL players' sons floating around on their team being good. Like Hutchinson. I don't know if his dad played in the NFL, though. I think it was his Uncle Steve, wasn't it?
Maybe.
But we'll see. Anything else you want to talk about this week?
No, I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think that's all I had. A kind of a random show. We will have some more coming up with the off season. Making some changes or making some adjustments back to the website, so you'll be able to get a little bit more detailed show notes from the show. It just takes me a while to get them all put together and populated. So that'll be coming hopefully in time for the start of the football season. So if you want us to add some extra insights or anything there, let us know. But you can always sign up with your email there. Maybe we'll give out some extra tips or something that we can do there. So let us know, and we will see you next week.